And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Dr. Dollahan, spiritual healer, life purpose coach, and energy psychology practitioner that holds a Ph.D. in Transpersonal and Humanistic Psychology. She had a pre-birth experience, which we're going to learn about and more. Dr. Dollahan, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
If you don't mind, Christine, let's just start on the day that you had this experience, unless you need a little backstory, and go from there.
Sure. Well, the day that I had this experience was my birth. So the first day of, or a little bit before the first day, I guess, I wouldn't know, right? Because it was different time and space before this lifetime started. And the experience, do you want me to go into the experience a little bit and talk about that?
I guess the best way to put it is, are you saying that you've remembered this pre-birth activity your entire life, or did you get regressed at some point later and then you discovered those memories?
No, I remembered it my entire life. It's something that I came in with and that never left me. And that was discredited actually by my parents because they were not, well, not that they weren't open to it, but they felt like most people feel, you can't possibly remember anything um before birth because, science tells you the brain is mush, right? Like nobody remembers their birth. So when I came up to my mom and I said, "Mommy, I think I remember my birth," my mom was like, "Ah, honey, you probably dreamt about this. This was probably just a dream." And that was somewhat, disappointing to me as a child because I mean, this memory wasn't a dream. Dreams are kind of fuzzy and like you remember some and don't, and you wake up and you're like, what did I dream about? But this is like more clear and real than anything. Like anything. I mean, I'm 36 turning 37 and I remember it like it happened yesterday and every little detail.
Then let's just have you take us through what you remember.
Well, I'll try my very best. I believe this memory must have been a couple of minutes, hours, or if at all, a day before I was born. I cannot really fully tell you. What I remember is that I was in a space that was um, hard to describe in human terms, but I'll try to do my best. It was sort of like an energy place where there was a lot of color floating around. So there were pinks and reds and whites and, like just light around me. It was a very lovely place. It was warm there. There was light, there was music. I felt very protected and loved and just kind of whole. I mean, I just felt whole there. And I was what I can only describe as walking down a path, although the place I was in wasn't like it wasn't like a material human place. It has the ability to sort of shape shift, I guess. But what I could only describe as a path I was walking down on, and I had somebody walk with me who was to my right actually, and I perceived this being as a taller being, and I felt like he was a mentor. And when I say he, that's just how he presented himself to me. That was just what I was comfortable with. It wasn't like there's gender over there per se. It was just what I, in that moment, was comfortable with. And he was walking to my right-hand side. I also had a perception that there were buildings of some sort to my left or behind me that I had just come from, and that there were other beings like me. And the way I perceived myself was pretty much like how I'm talking to you right now, just without a body. So I was sort of pure light, kind of essence. Um, when I was looking around me, it was just light. I was just a light, a ball of light, basically, ball of energy, but very much like what, speaks to you now, behind this flesh and body, sort of. Um, so I really perceived myself in some way, but more of an essence self, not the personality per se. And I get to that place more and more again. Sometimes the personality can kind of cloud you. And the more I meditate, the more I get to that sort of pure place that I felt myself to be in when I was walking down this path. So I was walking down this path and I had some, what I could only describe as sadness or like knowingness that I was about to depart somewhere. And I remember saying to my mentor on the right-hand side, who was very tall, like robes kind of, and the sort of perception I got from him was that he was a uh, a being that had maybe gone through the human experience or gone through the experience of incarnating a lot, but had sort of the choice to stay back and now mentor other souls who were still going through that process and finding that very beneficial. And so I was walking down this path and I said, do I really need to go? I really don't want to go back to planet Earth. I know what it's like down there. I've been down there many, many, many times. It is really hard down there and harsh. And there's, lots of emotions and feelings. And that's kind of what I said to him. When I say said to him, it was all telepathic communication. It's not as frustrating as communication is here on planet Earth. It's light speeds, instant sort of downloads of bigger concepts. So I was kind of downloading him with that concept, and he was talking back to me, and his concept was like, well, we talked about this. We know that you need to go down there. We know that that was what we decided was most beneficial for you at this time. And that you have something to do down there. That was sort of the gist of it. Now, I want to say that at the same time that I was talking with him, I was also simultaneously being downloaded with all this knowledge and wisdom and all this like universal stuff. So if I had a sense of like a God presence, like a larger presence around me that was very all loving and protective and all of that, but it was sort of like above or behind me, like downloading me with things. And all of this happened simultaneously. So it's not like chronological like it is in human space and time. So we were walking down there and we were approaching sort of the departure place, which I knew that was the departure place. So I started bargaining with him and I was like, do I really need to go? Like, can we just, maybe I don't want to go. I don't know if I really want to go. Like, maybe I can just hang back because it's so beautiful down out here and I feel so rested and I know I'm going to be really busy down there and I really don't, And he was like, oh, come on. He was very like a loving father, sort of like jokingly. And he was like, oh, come on. We talked about this. Yes, you really need to go. So we were coming to this place and it was sort of like a vortex place. So the way that I can only describe is like a helicopter hub, and it was spinning and it was a vortex, sort of like a funnel, and I was standing on the edge of that funnel and I saw several other souls just like me, light energy bulbs, and they had mentors like myself standing next to them, also about to depart. And I don't know where they were departing. I just kind of perceived them and their presence, but I had no idea of where they were going, if they were also departing to planet Earth or somewhere else, it felt like they were also incarnating somewhere. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm in good company. Somebody else is doing the same thing, right? Even if I don't like it. So I still was trying to like bargain. I really didn't want to come in. I was standing there at that edge, and at some point, my mentor was saying, "You really need to go now." It was like this bittersweet saying goodbye, and I'm like, "But I don't want to say goodbye." And then he said to me, he was like, "Well, you're never alone down there. You just, we can still communicate telepathically the way that we're communicating now. The key is that you don't forget about that. The key is not to let the veil sort of flip over you and you forgetting about it." And and so I was like, huh, okay. And in that moment, he pushed me. And I remember thinking, lovingly, none of this was in any way negative or anything. But I was kind of like, that, he would do that. That was so mischievous. He pushed me. And then I fell backwards. I was sort of sucked into that funnel. And the only way I can describe it is that in that moment, I was like, huh, I'm falling through the tunnel that I saw at my last death, but in reverse. So it was almost like a two-way street, Now I'm falling through this in reverse. So I'm being sucked into this tunnel. It's dark, dark, dark. And there was this changing place where suddenly it became really bright and very loud and very cold and very hard. And then I was slammed into my body. And I remember taking a breath. It was very painful and thinking, oh, here we go again. I'm in my body again. I'm in a life again. Ugh. And it wasn't because, of anything, but because I had done this many times and I knew that it would be hard and that breathing is hard and having hunger and drinking, and you have none of that stuff over there, right? It's just everything's effortless and beautiful. So, but so I was in my body, and then I just kind of passed out. And then the next memory I have is being sort of a child of maybe barely a year old, and I'm sort of like crawling and looking around, and you know, well, actually, I had a memory before that. That was must have been a couple of days after my birth, which was I was lying in the crib and I had all these heads sticking in my crib, and they're all being like, "Gucci, Gucci, goo," the excitement over a new baby and them seeing me, and me looking back at them and thinking, why are you sticking a stupid like ball in my face that's all multicolored? And why are you saying Gucci goo to me? I can well hear you. I'm fully functioning and thinking. You don't need to talk to me like I'm dumb. And then I just passed out again because I was just like, oh, I just don't want to deal with this. And then I had another memory where I was sort of like, it was like in between spaces. And that was the memory I was starting earlier, which was kind of off the ground of the floor. I was like crawling or something and like looking around the apartment I was raised in as a baby, and thinking to myself, and I think it was my mom or my dad were saying, well, your name is Christine, your name is Christine. And me thinking, now my name is Christine. And like trying to get familiar with it and thinking that I really didn't like that name, that I really liked the name that I had in the lifetime before much better, which was like Lisa or something like that. And then thinking, these are my parents now. Okay. And then kind of missing my parents from the lifetime before, and then just having sort of like random memories of coming in and out of different bodies and why I chose the body and the lifetime now. Then, I had a specific plan of why I came in, the way that I did. And so that was sort of the gist of it. Now, on the other end, my mom will tell you that, number one, I was 2 weeks late. I was born in Switzerland, actually. So the doctors were very concerned because I was 2 weeks late. They just didn't want to come, which was literally, I really didn't want to come, right? I was delayed on the other side. I mean, he pushed me, who God knows what would have happened if he didn't push me, my mentor, I mean, maybe I would have been a stillbirth or whatever, and then my mom also tells the story that after my birth, there was this nursery with 30 babies or so, and they were all crying and screaming, and I was smack in the middle, just like sleeping. She was like, "You're the only baby in there. You were sleeping, and we couldn't wake you up." And when I would share my pre-birth experience with her, I was like, yeah, mom, that makes so much sense, because I didn't want to be here. So I felt like, oh, I'll just sleep it away. If I sleep, I don't need to be in this body, right? I don't need to be in this life experience. And to this day, I love sleeping and I love dreaming because it feels like I'm connecting back to home, to what I call home. And it rejuvenates me, and it makes me much better able to walk through this life experience. So when there's hard, challenges and all of that, I I really cling on my dream life. But that's in a just my life, my pre-birth experience, and I've had this, this memory never went away. It's still as clear as yesterday. I mean, I don't remember what I ate yesterday, and I still remember this as clearly as it happened. It's more real than anything I've ever experienced in this lifetime.
Do you have any memories of making choices on the other side?
I have, I have one. Well, yeah, I have several memories, but they were kind of related to my like my previous lives. I remember specifically wanting to build, like, having chosen bodies that I perceived as less attractive, and sort of bargaining and saying, can I have a little bit of more attractive body in this lifetime? Because I'd like to have that experience of feeling more attractive, and also getting, the kind of the feedback from other humans of feeling more attractive. That was something that came in. And then also remember that I had a body in a previous lifetime. I had an experience where there was this memory of knowing that I had chosen that experience because I had another previous lifetime where I was a very bad person. And so I, kind of chosen a life where I was very ill and very just like, there was just a lot of sickness and brain damage and things like that. And then saying, well, in this lifetime, I'd really like to have a very sharp mind because I feel like this is important in this lifetime. Those are the two choices I distinctly remember. Yeah.
Well, you were sad that you had to come back. Do you have any memory of why you actually needed to do so?
I have no memory of why I needed to do so. No. I just knew that, well, the only thing that my mentor at the time said was, we discussed that you need to come here, right? I mean, I have, you know, I do also remember telling him, well, could this be my last lifetime? Like, could this be the last time I have to at least return to planet Earth, you know? And it was just sort of like, not, probably not, but you can speed it up. I mean, you can really, really, really be very good at Earth school and get everything down, right? And then, perhaps you don't have to come back as many times, right? Because you've gotten it all down, you've done it all, right? You can sort of skip a class or skip a grade. And I also remember thinking, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do everything I can to really be good in this lifetime so I can, kind of skip a few maybe and not have to come back as many times again.
Well, your mentor told you that he's going to communicate with you. So, have you been communicating with him?
Oh yeah, I have. And I realized that actually after the fact that and specifically in my childhood, I communicated a lot with him. He was with me. I had a lot of imaginary friends, which I now recognize weren't really imaginary friends. They were actually quite real. And then he was definitely there. He's changed since, and I've learned that after the fact, actually, that mentors can change on the other end, especially with as life passages change, or life transitions. So I have other mentors, another mentor, and other guides that have sort of joined and that I'm now in contact with. But I'm in contact with them daily, and and I really, when people are saying, "Well, is that God or not?" I really lump it into the lump sum of they're all from God, but they're different aspects of that. So I say it's my higher consciousness connection or my God connection. Yeah, daily.
Well, how do you communicate with him?
Well, I'm quite clairaudient and quite and clairaudient and clairvoyant, also clairsentient, but mostly through I talk with them in my ear. They're talking to me in my right ear mostly. Um and I hear them, and it's always very distinct guidance. They tell me things about where to go with my life, how to and lo and behold, these things then, actually come true and are always very beneficial when I listen to that inner voice. They will also tell me things about life members. I was told the arrival of my son, which then happened 2 years later. I was told that my father would leave, which happened 6 months ago. So, they constantly prepare me for different life changes, and I feel less alone. And when life really gets hard, I do, you could say call it prayer or whatever, but I will call out to them and say, hey, things really have to get easier now because, I mean, I know I chose a pretty hard life in terms of, like really wanting to go through everything, and like banging it out. But, I kind of need some help, and then there will always be help, like at this point, instantaneously, like somebody will call me or I will see something and something will shift in my life like instantly. So they're there. I know for sure they're there. Yeah.
Most likely, 99.9% of the population on this planet cannot remember pre birth. Do you think you can do it because it's some sort of glitch in the system, or it's something that you negotiated with your mentor?
I've thought about that for a long time and I haven't fully received answers to it. I mean, I think it has something to do with my purpose here on planet Earth in some way, which I do believe is higher, the shift in higher consciousness, and there's something there that I have to do there. They're pushing me more and more in that direction. I think that The interest in near death as well as pre-birth experience has a lot to do with this. I believe that we're currently going through the one last big revolution. You know, the last big revolution was the revolution in physics, with us discovering that planet Earth is actually not flat, but round. And now we're going through the last big revolution, which is this revolution of consciousness, where we're discovering that consciousness is actually not based in the brain. And this is my, scientific opinion, right? I'm sure people will contend me on this, but we don't know where consciousness is coming from. No brain scientist has yet found out where it comes from. There's different theories, but we don't know. And I feel the theory of this receptor, that our brain is working basically like a radio, and we can tune into different frequencies, makes a ton of sense, because that also explains why some people can communicate with their mentors, or are attuned to certain things that are undeniable, right? It's just we don't have the data and the measurement, the techniques to measure it yet. And I believe that that's part of the reason why maybe I remembered this also, to give people sort of the other bookend, right? Because there's a ton of people now that are remembering near death or having near death experiences, right? But here I am, and I had this pre-birth experience, and it's the other bookend which corresponds exactly into the near-death experiences. I mean, it's really literally the revolving door, right? One person comes in and the other one goes out, and it's the same thing, right? You see the same reality on the other side, and maybe that's why it's yet to be revealed to me, why I remember it.
Where do you think memories are stored, if not in the body?
I do believe in that concept of like Akashic Records, but if I knew where memories were stored, man, I'd probably be a rich girl. I think there's definitely something where we take memories with us within our energetic field, that ball of energy. I do believe we take that from lifetime to lifetime. The Akashic record thing makes a ton of sense. It's probably stored somewhere in consciousness as consciousness. But do I know exactly where? I don't. Yeah.
You mentioned your purpose earlier. How did you discover it, and what is it?
I discovered my purpose really honestly through the near-death experiences and near-death pre-birth experience. And now that you mention it, really, maybe that's also the reason why I had the pre-birth experience. Um, so, I had this pre-birth experience, was in contact with a ton of, imaginary friends as a child and all of that. And then mostly connected to them through artwork. So I would make art even as a small child. I'd color, and that's how I would connect with them. And I didn't realize that until I was a little older, actually. And then my sort of, I call it a domestication came in, right? And my parents didn't believe in any kind of spirituality. They didn't really have a religion they followed, even though I was baptized. But none of this. My father was very, had a very complicated relationship with God, let's put it that way, for his own personal reasons. And so that's sort of, what was layered onto me. And then when I came out with my pre-birth experience, it was sort of like, that was just a dream. That was nothing else. And so I was just like, okay, well, I guess they're saying that was just a dream, so I'm just gonna tuck it away, and that's that. And so I went about my merry way, but became sort of especially as I was turning into a teenager, sort of wondering about the meaning of life, and always having this feeling of like there's something bigger there, but not really getting the answers, and becoming somewhat depressed. I mean, I have to say it. I was feeling very low. I was feeling very disconnected. I had no sort of, like, other kids would play sports or whatever else. I had no joy in anything other than maybe doing artwork, but that was it. And so fast forward, I started going to school for art history because my dad told me I couldn't be a painter. I wouldn't make any money with it. So I decided, okay, then at least let me do art history. I wanted to become a nurse. I was told I couldn't do that either for other reasons. I wasn't smart enough in math and whatever else. So I said, okay, I'm not going to be like going down the healer path, even though I really want to do that. But then let me do the artwork at least, right? Because I could connect to something higher with that. So I ended up doing art history. And during my time, doing art history, I was in Germany, and I was partying. I mean, I was doing my studies, but there was a lot of partying, a lot of drinking, and I felt very disconnected and depressed, and honestly, just kind of put alcohol over, that feeling, because it was just unbearable being on planet Earth. I mean, I was just like, I don't want to be here. This is awful. Let me at least drink it away, because there's a glimpse of something, that makes me feel a little bit alive. And then, whatever. And then there was one night, I think I must have been like 23 or 24. I had an awful relationship with somebody, and bless his heart if he hears this. I mean, we were both on our healing journeys, and we had an awful fight. And I was sitting, in Germany, like on this little marketplace at 3 a.m. in the morning, looking at the stars, crying profusely, and thinking to myself, this can't be it. I feel so goddamn alone on this planet. This cannot be it. This cannot be the purpose in life. And so it was literally in that moment where I believed that my spiritual guidance came in, because it was in some ways a prayer. It was in some ways a please, help me. That it was like, okay, you have two choices. You can either continue going down this path of drinking everything away, and and sort of like putting it away, or you can actually start exploring this interest of yours. And at that time, I've dabbled in spirituality and different spiritual things my entire life. But I dabbled in it. And so the next day I kind of made that decision then and there, and I was like, something has to change. And so the next day I went into the bookstore, and I started getting a book on meditation, and I started getting books on stress relief and all these things. And that's really what started me out on my path of, dabbling in more and more spirituality, until finally, it was like sort of a push and pull. I would go in, and then I'd like kind of go back out, and I'd go in, and that might also be my Cancer ways. But because to me, this was the most outlandish thing, right? Like I had at the time, I had an archaeology teacher who's very dear to me and really took me on. And she was like, I would really advise you to go to like an intuitive, a psychic. And I'm like, eek, a psychic? I would never go to a psychic. What do you mean a psychic? and but then she connected me with her, and she told me things about myself that nobody could have ever known. So I was like, okay, well, the skeptic in me was like, okay, well, maybe there's something to it. And then she told me, and she was like, you're meant to do this. You're meant to work with, the angelic realm. You're meant to you're a healer. You're here to do this, and you're going to help a lot of people. And I was like, really? At that time, I mean, I was not on this path at all. And I'm like, really? Okay. I mean, this is cool, but it doesn't, resonate with me, or, not in that sense, especially angels and all of that. I mean, that was too Christian for me. It was like, angels, what do you mean, I indulged in it, and I sort of started reading books on it and all that. Anyway, fast forward a couple years, I really realized that art history wasn't what I was meant to do, because it felt flat. And I started looking for a PhD, because I was like, if there's something to it, I need the proof. And I'm not just going to be some energy healer or somebody who just takes a course and then tells people, I mean, maybe that's also my German nature, right? I need to know everything, like, I need to know the facts, and I need to be really trained in it. But I was like, okay, if there's a PhD in this, if there's something in this where I can start researching this for myself first and foremost, and then when I find the evidence and the the connecting dots, then I can go out and I can actually help people, right? But if the dots don't connect, I'm not going to do this. And lo and behold, I found a PhD that worked, and the dots connected, and here I am. So this is my purpose. Absolutely. I'm living it right now.
That's awesome. When people study transpersonal and humanistic psychology, do they usually venture out into things that are this alternative, or does it still stay more academic?
Most people who study this venture out into the alternative, but I think I would argue that most people who study transpersonal, specifically transpersonal psychology, I would say humanistic, I think is becoming more mainstream because it's really just recognizing the person as a whole person and that, the person-centered approach. But I think in the transpersonal space, it's because it is basically transpersonal is a different word for saying spiritual, right?
Mm.
Outside of the person, outside of the ego. And most people who are studying this are definitely in the alternative space and are probably have the same mission as I do, which is really, you know, uh, making it more getting it more into the mainstream through data and a more scientific research based approach. Yeah, for sure.
What data can you share with us that demonstrates that all this woo-woo stuff is real?
Well, I mean, I think that what's happening in science and in transpersonal psychology and all that is really the integration of spirituality or religion with physics. And I mean, Einstein, honestly, was probably the first person who kind of like started that ball rolling with quantum physics, because quantum physics is essentially this, and it's all energy, really. When I tell people, this is not woo woo, it's all energy. And nobody can argue with that because we know that, a table, I mean, you read Einstein or any kind of, and I'm not a physician by any means, but you read all of those texts and you will, find that like the table that this computer is standing on is just energy that's vibrating on a very low frequency, right? And that's why it's, but it's still vibrating. People can't wrap their head around that. The particles in it they're still moving. It's still vibrating. It's just vibrating at a very low frequency. And so everything's energy, right? So that's one data that you can look up that's non-deniable, right? We are energy. Um, we're energy vibrating on different kinds of level. Our bodies are lower vibrating, right? But like our spirit, the thing that I described earlier that entered my body is high vibrating, right? We know it by I mean, most people I think cannot argue that they sometimes enter a room and maybe there was a fight or there was something talked about that was, more on the negative side, and we notice it. We notice the tension. That's consciousness and energy, right? It's us picking up and interacting with that. And so everything's energy, and energy can't be destroyed. That's also a physical law, right? It can't be destroyed. It can only be changed, which corresponds with the idea that people have near-death experiences and they're real because their energy has just left the body, right? It's transformed. It hasn't been destroyed, and it's just taken on the other energies that they accumulated, talking about the memories, right? Accumulated with them into that afterworld to rest and then come back and work on it some more, right? This is also, I had a question by somebody the other day, and they were like, well, but why do we come back on planet Earth if it's so hard here? And the answer is because planet Earth, amongst other planets, right, are schooling planets or, lower vibrating planets. And here on planet Earth, we can have relationships, and with relationships come emotions. And those are the best teachers we can have to evolve, our consciousness and to understand where we're coming from and where we're moving to, which is, the reintegration with all that, the greater God, right? But we can only learn about that if we interact with these different emotions, which are also just energy. So I feel like it's more and more becoming, and uh, people are starting to understand more and more that science and religion are really not separate things, but we're integrating. Everything's being integrated, and coming back into wholeness and balance. Yeah.
In the beginning, I said you are a life purpose coach. How do you help people discover their purpose?
Oh, so the way it's come to me, and I always say this is not just my doing, okay? So I'm very much in contact with the other side and my guides and all of that. And so it's really given to them as well. So they're really working through me. So I have a ton of tools. I have 3 pieces that I use. One is as a coaching piece, which is techniques, tried and true techniques that I've learned from the Life Purpose Coaching Institute in California. That with worksheets and all of that, that's probably the most grounded piece that I use, as well as some of my psychology background. Although I'm not a trained psychotherapist, and I wouldn't claim to be, but that's one piece. And then that integrates with my intuitiveness and me working with my guides, me working with the guides of my clients, and their intuition, and bringing in whatever they need us to know about their healing journey and journey towards purpose. And then I also have an energy healing piece because, like I said, we come in with energy from other lifetimes that can block us, that can, make things difficult, right? There's all kinds of, there's contracts, there's karma, there's all kinds of things, right? And so energy healing can really create a sort of space, almost like a bed, right? Within where we can um, unblock things and really move forward with clarity. And so that's kind of the how I work. It's very customized. So some people might feel not, they might not be ready to do all the intuitive work and the energy work because it's too woo-woo for them and they don't fully understand and they're not comfortable with it. So then I wouldn't be going in that route, right? The guides would discourage it as well because then that would block them more, right? So we might just start out with just a coaching piece of doing worksheets and really like starting to go introspective and then moving in that direction if it's guided. But it's very customized and very guided work that I do.
If I take you back to your pre-birth memory, can you describe the music that you heard?
No, because it's the kind of music that, I mean, the best I can describe is like maybe like a very, there's some pieces of like newer piano music or newer classical music that could come close to it. It was very angelic. I could describe it like that. Very joyful. But then also very otherworldly. It's a kind of music that doesn't really exist here, but some pieces would come close. It moves you in the heart center. Yeah, it's very beautiful, very beautiful.
How long have you been practicing for?
I received my PhD 2 years ago, and I've been practicing for a total of about 5 years with interruptions because I was pregnant and I had 2 kids, and that was also a part of my path. So yeah, so 5 years.
Okay. Well, over the 5 years, have you noticed patterns within people that keep them stuck or not moving forward in their life? And if so, can you share those with us?
Yeah. I have noticed. I mean, I've noticed that a lot of people, in some way, shape, or form, are having, issues with the hard emotions, the big emotions, which makes planet Earth so hard. And it's interesting. I call it suffering, right? That's a very Buddhist approach. The Buddha said life is suffering. And I mentioned that to a client the other day, and she was like, "What do you mean suffering? I had a good life." And I'm like, "Yeah, but wouldn't you agree that getting your heart broken is suffering? Like, it's not nice. You don't want your heart broken, or going through grief because a parent died. That's suffering. That's not nice. Even the crazy thoughts in your head all day, about like, problems that might not be problems or might be problems, that's suffering, right? So I've noticed a lot of people sort of coming against these bigger emotions of sadness, of anger, of grief, and then not really wanting to see them for what they are, which are really teachers and blessings in order to sort of evolve, but wanting to like medicate them. And then the way that we most of us medicate is with either overeating, over drinking, um, social media, a big thing at this point, scrolling through and, looking at other people's lives and judging other people's lives is so much easier than looking at our own stuff. And then some people, will go into the harder drugs. I mean, starts out, weed or whatever, and then overdo that. And I'm not saying any of this is bad. I'm just saying it's bad when we do it, it's out of balance and we do it to medicate something that we don't want to look at. Because the feelings and the emotions and the relationships are there for a reason. and they might be hard, but they're also here to help us evolve and to really come back to, the main purposes we all share, which is coming back into the understanding that we are made in the image of that, higher consciousness, God, unconditional love. We are unconditional love, number one. And number two is we're actually here to have joy and to feel joy and to be joyful. I think that 99% of people don't live that joy to its fullest, right? And then try to get glimpses of it with healthy or unhealthy habits. Yeah, that's the main pattern I notice with people.
So you're saying that we all choose to come here and suffer because it's a way to learn and evolve from it.
Yep, that's absolutely what I say. Yeah, I believe that.
What
Mhm.
about the people out there that would say, well, how would some child in Africa choose to come and starve to death?
Mm. That's a good one and a hard one. Well, I think that we all, in some way, shape, or form, I believe that all of us who have been here have had multiple lives. I do believe in incarnation and reincarnation because I have those memories. So it'd be hard not to believe in it. I actually have evidence. And I believe that we all have been in some shape, way, or form that starving child. I do believe that there is contracts, that there is karma, that there is, something that the soul gets out of that experience. Um, I also say that a lot to moms, for instance, who have like miscarriages and things like that. That, from a human standpoint is awful, right? A mother who wishes to have a child and then miscarries is absolutely awful. But I found that a lot of women find it relatively healing, or birthing people find it healing to hear that they've actually given that child an opportunity to incarnate really quick. Like maybe that child didn't want to have that full life experience because it is hard down here, right? They just wanted to come in really quick, and they gave them that opportunity. So it's a really big sacrifice, and not just sacrifice, but sacrifice of love towards that soul, right? Because the soul didn't have to fully incarnate and get in a body and do all the things again, right? It could just do it really quickly. I believe we all had really awful lives, if we were here on planet Earth. And so sending compassion to that soul and saying, like maybe, that soul is really going through stuff and all of that. Anyway, sending compassion to that soul, I think, is a good thing. And also knowing that we probably were all there at some point. I full-heartedly believe that, and have memories I can't tell you about because they're not here in the memory form, but like hunches and intuitions that I know I've been a child like that at some point in my evolution.
Do you feel pretty confident that when a child talks to imaginary friends that it is really talking to beings on the other side?
I feel 100% confident about that. Yes. And in fact, my daughter's 3.5 now, and she just started doing that. She's a highly sensitive human who has had a very hard time coming into her body. Also, because she had a pretty rough past life recently to this. And as a mom, I think there's a reason why she chose me too, because I think most moms wouldn't have understood and wouldn't have been able to deal with it. But she's just starting to talk, and she keeps telling me about ghosts and witches and all of that. So she's actually starting to talk to the other side and seeing deceased loved ones and things like that. And she will tell me things about them. And she has tons of imaginary friends. And I believe that all children, because they're still so pure, they still come from that place, right? They weren't domesticated yet. And like thinking that this isn't real or whatever. That's why I always encourage parents too, and saying, this new generation, these little ones that are kids now, they need us as parents to really encourage them. And if we can't encourage them, to at least let it be and not put our dogma on it, because who knows, maybe they are talking to somebody. This new generation is going to build this new earth, right? And this new earth is, like I said earlier, there's this huge shift in consciousness happening, this huge revolution in consciousness. And I believe that part of the plan is that all of us at some point will remember where we came from and come here. And it won't be a hard training planet anymore. It will actually be a much lighter and softer planet. Um, which I think is also why, I mean, these memories are exploding. These experiences are exploding. More and more people are having them, and it's made known through mediums like YouTube and things like that, podcasts and all of that.
What other changes are out there that you think are demonstrating this change?
That are currently seeing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Or what we could possibly expect to see?
Well, I do believe that we're all going to become aware that we're able to talk with the other side, that we're all inherently intuitive or psychic, so to speak. I do believe we all are. There's some people that are more inclined to develop that ability, just like some people like to play music better than others, and some like to play ball, basketball, whatever. So I do believe that that is a change, and I think that more and more people are experiencing it too, that never thought that they were psychic, right? And they have these different things. I think that there's more and more synchronistic things happening where people are, you think of somebody and suddenly they call you, things like that. It's also part of consciousness merging and unity. I believe that, we see it in all of the disasters all around the world, right? I'm talking natural disasters mostly. Earthquakes like we had in New Jersey the other day. Of all places, nobody ever thought we'd have an earthquake in New Jersey. Here we are. All these storms that are ramping up. I mean, and this is all predicted. This is what I wrote my dissertation about. This shift in consciousness has been predicted in major texts, but also minor texts, and they all predict the same thing. The Hopi had predictions about this time where the world would end. And my husband the other day was like, "Well, people thought the solar eclipse, the world will end," and I'm like, "Well, it is ending. It is ending." But it's not ending in the way that we think. The earth is not going to explode and we're all going to be gone. It's ending as we know it because consciousness is shifting and we're understanding ourselves in a different light. We understand that we're spiritual beings in a human body. We understand that we can communicate telepathically. At some point, we will just communicate telepathically, right? We won't be able to need to speak anymore. We are understanding that everything's connected. We understand that nature is actually, energy and a force for itself, right? And as Mother Earth is telling us something right now, and it's saying, I'm not happy with my humans, right? They need to change things and live more in harmony. So I think we're seeing it all around us. I also believe that holistics and the kind of thing that I'm doing is going to become more and more popular and more accepted. Energy healing has become more and more accepted because we're going to start understanding that we are energy and that our health is actually directly connected to our thoughts. That again creates feelings, creates energy, and all of that. So I think it's all happening, and it's I think past 2030 and then into, the later part of this millennium, we're going to see those changes happening. And this new generation is going to lay it because there are more and more high consciousness beings coming in now.
What advice do you have for people who want to speed up their own evolution?
Um,
I mean, even simple things like day-to-day meditation or...
I think meditating is probably the greatest thing to do. And meditating doesn't necessarily mean to sit on a cushion and and singing Om in your head. I mean, meditation could mean a lot of things. Meditation could even just mean walking in nature and connecting with nature, but really going within. I think this is a revolution, also going within, because we have to first understand our own consciousness. And we have to first understand the difference between that essence that I was talking about earlier, that ball of energy that we all are, that we all come in with, that soul essence, and then the difference between that and the ego, right? The personality, that kind of DNA, the personality, that body that was built for us. And when we start less identifying with that ego and more identifying with who we truly are at our core, which how we came in, then our evolution is going to get so much easier, because not only do we start getting help from the other side because we can hear it more clearly, and there's not all this noise of like fear talk of like, I'm not pretty enough, or what if they judge me, or now I'm judging them, or what if the neighbors see this, or whatever else. If that busy, crazy mind is sort of calmed down, right? And we can tap into that, that true can get help from the other side. And then we can also tap into that little packet that we came in with, all of us, right? That little contract packet of knowing, oh, this is what I'm meant to do here. And this is unique as a fingerprint, right? We all have a unique purpose. And so if that means I'm unique and my purpose is unique, there's nobody else in the world that can do exactly what I do. So there's no competition. So the whole idea of fear is completely nixed out, and I'm living my truth, which is unconditional love, and then things will flow. So definitely meditation, I would say, in whatever way that is, but calming the mind, quieting the mind, and understanding the difference between what's my personality, what's my ego, right? And I'm by no means thinking the ego is something bad, by the way. I'm just saying it is something, and it can become a problem when it becomes too strong in us, right? And creates this illusion. And then what is my true essence, right? What is the eternal peace within me is a very, very important thing, which is, I also believe, as a last piece, why meditation is starting to become so vastly popular, because people are starting to get true results with it, not only because they quiet down their minds, but because whether they consciously or subconsciously know it, they're connecting back with their true essence and that feeling of home, which we are all longing for in the end.
Do you ever think about how we choose a purpose pre-birth, but then we get here and we can't remember it? So why are we, so why is that?
I think that initially, it was really here because what's the point if we know why we're here, right? If you already know the assignment of like, oh, I'm meant to, meet XYZ, and we're going to have a horrible marriage, and I'm going to take all these drugs because he's abusing me. And, oh, that's what's happening. Okay, then there's no point in trying to figure it out and actually engaging with it, right? Because you already know what it is. There's no fun to it, right? If we don't know, though, we actually, can be fully in the experience, right? And most people wake up when they are really in deep, dark shit, and they don't know how to get out of it anymore, and they've really had enough, right? That's when they wake up, and that's when they start engaging with it. And that's when they're like, oh, let me look at this. Let me get a therapist. Let me get a healer. Let me get somebody. Let me buy this book, right? It's through the times of grief and of darkness when we actually do our work, right? When we had enough. But if we already know, oh, now I'm supposed to be in this dark place. Okay, well, la-di-la, then what's the point of it? So, but I do believe also that this is going to go away more and more. I think that we're going to have more and more children coming in, remembering both their past lives as well as their birth. Because our planet is starting to vibrate on a higher consciousness level, and we are moving towards this 5-dimensional space where we're understanding ourselves less as dense energy and more as light beings within our body, and we're understanding more and more who we truly are and why we're here, right? We're not meant to be. Planet Earth also wants to evolve as a whole, right? And so I think it's becoming less and less relevant to actually not remember the illusion, right? Or it's the veil is becoming less relevant, is what I'm saying. That's being placed over us when we come into um, this lifetime.
After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you
Mhm.
open to that? And if so, how do they contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm open to it. They can contact me via email is best. So my email is it's drchristine@gmail.com. And then I also have a website, which is it's drchristine.com, where they can learn a little bit more about me.
Well, before we wrap it up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
I think there's just a lot of fear and a lot of sort of uncertainty about all the changes that are happening in the world. And I think that the what I want to leave people with is it's all right. It's all right. It's all in perfect order. It's all happening for a reason. The darkness is happening for a reason. And there's something really beautiful coming out of this. I'm actually, like I shared earlier with you, when the earthquake happened, I was actually excited in some ways because I was like, wow, this is a really exciting time to be alive in. There's so much opportunity and so much potential. I mean, we're part of the last big revolution on planet Earth, revolution of consciousness. So to like reframe it away from fear and more towards love and excitement and knowing that it's okay, I can take a deep breath, everything will be all right, you know. So I think that's it.
Dr. Dollahan, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.